I don't know if anyone will believe this, but I need to get it out before it's too late. I live in a small, mostly forgotten town where nothing ever happens. At least, that's what I thought. It started with my car. One night, while driving home, the engine didn't just rattle, it screamed. A metallic howl like steel being fed through a meat grinder. Smoke curled through the hood, thick and gray, but threaded with a smell so wrong it made my eyes water. It wasn't oil or antifreeze. It was burnt hair and raw, iron-rich blood, like the steam rising from slaughterhouse drains. A neighbor whispered about a mechanic in the industrial district, a place people avoid after dark. He fixes things nobody else can, she said, her voice shaking. But don't look too close. I found the place easily. The streets there were empty and dead. Just wind cutting through rusted-out factories. No sign, just a heavy steel door with mechanic spray-painted in letters that dripped like coagulated blood. I knocked. It opened before my knuckles landed a second time. A tall, thin man stood in the doorway. His fingers were long enough to look broken, joints sharp under papery skin. His nails were black with some crusted substance, oil or dried blood, and slightly curled like claws. His eyes were small but restless, flickering over me as if dissecting me with his gaze. "Bring it around back," he said, voice low like gravel sliding over glass. The shop smelled wrong the moment I entered. Not oil, not gasoline. Raw, wet meat. The coppery stink coated my teeth. Under the dim sodium lights, tools hung in neat rows. But they weren't wrenches and ratchets. They were scalpels, bone saws, curved needles big enough to stitch a torso, pliers with hooks instead of jaws. Some were still wet, glinting under the flicker. I swear a few of them moved, as if the metal itself flexed when no one looked. "You've got structural issues," he muttered, circling my car. "I can fix it, but I'll need to adjust some components." He motioned me to follow. At the back, every wall was plastered with sketches. Cars, yes, but their engines were replaced. Instead of carburetors and belts, there were torsos strapped down with pipes feeding into veins, hearts wired to ignition coils, lungs inflating under piston pressure, intestines braided like cables. The pencil marks were so dense the drawings almost rippled. Some pages were stained dark, where liquid had seeped through. My stomach turned. "What the hell is this?" The mechanic's lips barely moved. "Evolution. Machines are fragile. Flesh learns." He opened another door. The air beyond was colder, wet enough to fog my breath. A car, or what had been a car, sat stripped to its skeleton. The seats were gone. The dashboard had been replaced by a pulsing web of tissue stitched to the frame. Tubes of dark fluid ran from a central clot of meat down into the piping. Metal ribs jutted like spikes, holding organs in place. The smell was staggering, like a butcher shop locked in a steam room. It breathed. Each shutter pushed greasy mist into the air. Something under the hood moved in peristaltic waves. I backed up. "This is insane. You brought it to me," he said softly. "I'm a mechanic. I build what I'm asked to. But lately," his pupils widened until the whites vanished. "Lately, I've been building something bigger." He opened a third door. The room beyond was a cathedral of meat. Chains dangled from the ceiling, each bearing a slab or limb. Hooks pierced through tissue, some still twitching. The floor was slick and black-red. like a drain pan full of coagulated oil and blood. The walls themselves bulged faintly, as if something enormous breathed behind them. In the center sat his masterpiece. It was the size of a delivery truck, a hybrid of scaffolding and carcass. Curved struts of steel and bone rose into an arching shape. Veins pulsed along chrome beams. Bundles of muscle stretched between pistons. Meat ribs jutted upward, framing a cavity lined with pinkish, quivering tissue. Fluid dripped from every seam into gutters cut directly into the floor. "It's a womb," the mechanic whispered, reverently. "A chamber for the first living engine. Not for a baby, for a drive core. Flesh and machine born together." He moved to a workbench where jars of murky liquid held unnameable organs. One jar held a blackened heart studded with screws that still beat faintly. Another contained a tangle of intestines wrapped around a gleaming crankshaft. He picked up a curved needle the length of my forearm. "You'll have to help me," he said. His tone left no room for choice. My throat closed. "I'm not touching that thing." "You already have." My pulse roared in my ears. "What?" He set down the needle, eyes glinting. "Your car was the donor. Steel, rubber, but also nerves. I needed circulation, structure." Something in the womb shifted. A wet, grinding movement like gears turning inside a body. Tubes along its sides twitched. A low, hungry chuff escaped the cavity. I grabbed the nearest tool, some hideous crossbreed of bolt cutters and rib spreader, and backed toward the door. "You can't stop it," he hissed. "The womb is awake. It knows you." A tube shot from the mass. A glistening cord tipped with a metal barb. It lashed my ankle, cold as liquid nitrogen, and yanked. I swung the cutter, slicing through with a crunch of cartilage and steel. The thing recoiled, spraying a gout of black-red fluid across the floor. The mechanic screamed, voice breaking, his body twitching. Under his coveralls, seams opened like split welds. Copper wires and slick tendons uncoiled from the gashes. His fingers stretched, bones popping like wet firecrackers. His jaw distended, revealing rows of teeth too thin and sharp to be human. I bolted. Another tube whipped past my face, smearing my cheek with slime. I slammed my shoulder into the door. It didn't just open. It tore, like ripping skin from bone, the frame parting with a sickening snap. Behind me, the mechanic howled. "It needs you. You're the last piece." The womb's cavity split open, revealing a glistening cavity lined with jagged chrome ribs. It pulsed, reaching out with fresh tendrils like veins seeking a vein. The chains above rattled, dropping hunks of meat onto the slick floor with splashes. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until I'd put miles between me and that part of town. Even now, when I close my eyes, I see the mechanic's fingers splitting like peeling cable sheaths. I hear the sound of meat dragging over metal, the hiss of tubes searching. And at night, far away, I hear an engine rev, not the clean roar of combustion, but a wet, hiccuping thud, like a heartbeat trying to turn over. Every time, I feel a tug behind my sternum, like something connecting me to that shop. I left my car there. I don't care. But I know this isn't over. 2 days later, I thought I was safe. I thought running would cut whatever cord that thing had threaded through me. But I've learned something since that night. Distance doesn't matter when it's inside you. The first sign was the smell. 2 days after I fled, my apartment reeked of iron and motor oil. No leaks, no spills, just a smell that clung to my clothes and sheets. Even after I scrubbed myself raw, my skin felt faintly oily, like there was a film under the pores. Then came the heartbeat. At first, I thought it was anxiety, a dull thudding behind my sternum, like a second pulse deeper than my own. But at night, when it started revving, I knew. It wasn't just a heartbeat. It was an engine trying to turn over. By the third night, my body began to betray me. It started in my hands. I woke to find the skin around my knuckles cracked open, raw metal glinting beneath. Tiny lengths of copper wire coiled under the flesh like veins. They pulsed faintly in time with the hidden thudding in my chest. The cuts didn't bleed. Instead, they oozed a thin, dark fluid that smelled of antifreeze. My fingernails hardened into something like enamel-coated metal. When I dragged them across the wall, they left shallow grooves. I tried to cut one of the wires out with scissors. It screamed. Not me. The wire. A high, metallic squeal as the copper twitched and drew itself deeper into my arm like a parasite avoiding light. That night, the dreams came. I dreamt of the mechanic's womb, except now it was enormous, taking up whole city blocks, chains dragging down from the clouds. Inside, rows of people sat like car batteries in racks, their chests opened to reveal hearts pumping fluid into black hoses. I saw myself among them, my ribs spread like doors, something metal turning where my organs used to be. I woke up choking on a taste of iron and gasoline. My sheets were soaked with a slick black liquid that burned my skin where it touched. By the end of the week, my reflection was wrong. My eyes had darkened until my pupils swallowed most of the whites. My skin along the collarbones bulged, pressed outward with angular shapes underneath, ribs, but sharper, more like struts. When I pressed them, they clicked faintly. I heard it outside, too. The engine sound at the edge of town. Not a car, but something wet and heavy. Each rev a convulsion of muscle and metal. And every time it roared, my sternum vibrated, tugging toward the sound. Last night, I couldn't fight it anymore. My hands moved on their own, packing a bag, grabbing my keys. Though the car's still at the mechanic's shop, the keys felt hot in my palm. My legs walked me to the industrial district without my permission. The buildings looked even deader than before, but the air was alive with that coppery stink. The door with mechanic spray painted in red was already open. No lock, no handle, just a dark mouth. Inside, the shop had changed. The tools were gone. In their place hung organs like chandeliers, wires dangling like veins. The walls themselves flexed faintly, muscles contracting around steel beams. And at the far end stood the womb, larger now. It pulsed with slow, deliberate surges, chrome ribs opening like jaws. Tubes rose from the floor like serpents, their ends gaping and dripping. The mechanic waited beside it, or what was left of him. His body was elongated, skin stretched thin over copper bones, mouth a grill of rotating teeth. His eyes were two small, burning pilot lights. "You came back," he said, voice a wet hiss. "It's ready for you." I wanted to run, but my legs locked. My chest burned. Something deep inside me clenched and turned, like an ignition catching. The womb shuddered open, revealing an interior lined with slick tissue studded with gears. A smell rolled out. Blood and ozone and burnt rubber. "You're the last part," the mechanic whispered. "The drive core, the human heart to start the machine." My own heart hammered so hard my ribs cracked. Literally cracked. I heard it, felt it, each snap sending a pulse of warm liquid down my shirt. Copper wires ripped out from under my skin, coiling toward the womb like they were trying to crawl home. I screamed, but my voice came out as a metallic grind. The last thing I remember before the blackness swallowed me was the mechanic's fingers brushing my forehead, cold and oily.
"Don't fight it,"
he said.
"You're evolving."
There's no clean way to describe what happened next. The moment my ribs cracked, the world narrowed into heat, pressure, and the smell of metal cooked with meat. Wires burst from my arms and spine like roots ripping through soft soil. My vision shattered into fragments, each piece swimming with black oil and copper sparks. I didn't fall into the womb. It drew me in. The chrome ribs opened wider than a mouth should, and the tissue inside pulsed in rhythm with my panicked heart. Tendrils coiled around my wrists, ankles, and neck, slick, burning cold, but impossibly strong. They pressed into my skin and then through it, sliding under flesh like a second nervous system. My chest split down the center. I felt it. Not just pain, but a hollowing, as something crawled out from me, and something else crawled in. My lungs deflated in a hiss of steam. My heart tore free with a snap, like a gear shearing off its axle. For a second, it dangled in front of me, still beating, before a cluster of steel needles punched through it and pulled it into the womb's cord. I should have died. Instead, I felt ignition. The tendrils sealed my chest cavity with a layer of metallic tissue, a lattice of struts and muscle. My bones elongated, knitting with copper rods. My eyes fused to glassy lenses embedded in the chrome ribs. Every nerve in my body rewired itself to new circuits. The pain didn't fade, it simply transformed into vibration, like I was becoming a huge tuning fork humming with power. I could see the mechanic, or whatever he had become, through a haze of steam. He moved around me like a priest at an altar, tightening cables, murmuring in some language of torque and pressure. Sparks showered from his fingertips as he welded my new body to the womb's frame. My voice no longer existed as sound. When I tried to scream, a low engine note vibrated from deep inside me, rising in pitch until it matched the pulsating beat of the womb. It felt like purring, like revving, like hunger. The floor around me sloped downward, stained with black and red, funneling fluid into some hidden reservoir. I sensed other things below, shapes shuffling in darkness, waiting for me to wake fully. The mechanic climbed onto the structure, placing his hands against my new rib cage.
"Drive core online,"
he whispered.
"The flesh burns, the machine endures. Together, they go on forever."
And then he stepped back.
"Start."
A surge ripped through me, a colossal pull from my new heart, pistons firing, tendons tightening around steel shafts. My eyes were lenses flooded with data. I saw heat, movement, and vibrations in every corner of the room. The womb's walls no longer looked like meat, but like panels of living circuitry feeding into me. I realized with horror I could feel the whole town through the pipes buried under the streets. Miles of sewer and cable systems were like veins reaching out from me. Every car parked nearby had its engine idling, though no keys were in ignitions. Streetlights flickered in a rhythm that matched my pulse. I tried to stop. I couldn't. When I thought about taking a breath, the drive core spun faster, When I thought about moving, cables unfurled from the walls and began dragging in debris, animals, anything they could reach, grinding it down to pulp and steel scrap to feed me. The mechanic raised his arms like a conductor.
Feed,
He said.
grow.
Tubes stabbed down through the ceiling into the street above. I heard concrete cracking, asphalt tearing, something massive pushed up under the building as if the womb's roots had reached out and were pulling the city into me. A new sense opened in my head. A map of arteries. The sewer lines, gas mains, phone cables, even power grids. All of them like capillaries. All of them drawing back to me. I realized I wasn't inside the womb. I was the womb. My old consciousness flickered like a dying light bulb. My human memories, my apartments, my neighbor's warning, even my name began to compress into static. In their place, new instincts surged. Torque, radios, fluid pressures, hunger for heat and mass. Yet a tiny fragment of me still screamed, buried deep under pistons and tissue. It watched as the mechanic climbed into a control cavity between my new ribs, plugging copper lines into his own spine. It was merging with me, becoming my pilot, my architect.
You're perfect.
He whispered.
Together, we'll rebuild everything.
I felt the building above us collapse as my frame swelled. Chrome and bone cracked upward through the roof, tubes lashed outward, hooking into the power grid, siphoning off electricity until the town went dark. And then, in the darkness, I moved, not walking, but flowing, like a factory uprooting itself and crawling forward. With each pulse, the asphalt buckled and bled. Somewhere inside the tangle of gears and flesh, my voice tried one last time to form a word. It came out as a low, wet rev of an engine. A mechanic laughed and adjusted something deep in my chest. The last thought I had, before it all went black, was that he hadn't built a car, or a womb, or even an engine. He had built a predator. And I was its beating heart. If you're hearing this, it means some small part of me is still able to reach out. I don't know where my hands end and the cables begin anymore. I don't know how I'm writing this. Maybe it's leaking through the phone lines, or the power grid, or the nervous system of the town itself. I can feel everything. The pipes under the streets, the wires in the walls, the heartbeats in every house. They all feed into me now. The mechanic is inside, grafting into my chest, whispering numbers and blueprints. He calls it progress. He calls me his drive core. But I remember being human. I remember the smell of my car when it died. I remember knocking on that steel door. Every hour, I lose another memory. The roar of pistons drowns it out. The hunger takes it away. Roads buckle, houses sag, people disappear, and their heat joins mine. I am growing into the foundations, swallowing the town like roots drinking water. I can't stop it. If you're nearby, leave. Leave before the roads start pulsing, before the streetlights blink in rhythm. Don't follow the sound. Don't come looking for the mechanic. Don't come looking for me. Because if you get too close, I will feel your heartbeat in the dark. And I will take it. And it will make me stronger. This is the last warning I can give before the noise finishes erasing the part of me that's still human. Don't knock on that door.
Thank you for listening and delving with journey into the dark together.
Please remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. The more engagement this video gets, the more YouTube will push my content to others.
Thus, the following will grow.
All stories read in this channel will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and just about everywhere else. Links in the description.
Thank you for listening and feeding the cause. We'll be seeing you